All right, let's dive into wastewater treatment in India. Today, we're looking at a company, Enviro Infra Engineers Limited, that's getting ready for an IPO. And we've got reports and analyses that give us a pretty unique look into their business.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's like this critical need for clean water. And then there's this whole market growing around it. So Enviro Infra, they design and build water treatment plants. Those are WTPs. And they also do the wastewater treatment plants, the WWTPs. And they work specifically with government authorities in India.
Got it. So we're talking about big infrastructure projects here. And since they're going public, we've got their draft red herring prospectus. I'm really curious what this document tells us, about how they operate, their financials.
Oh, yeah, this prospectus is like a gold mine of information. It's like a window into their whole journey, their plans.
Hmm.
Investors would be all over this right now. For example, we see they've already won contracts for 21 WWTPs and water supply scheme projects. Those are the WSSPs. Some serious wins worth millions of rupees.
Wow, that's an impressive portfolio. I'm kind of amazed by their growth. They started as a small partnership back in 2009, and now they're a major player.
Yeah, it's a real testament to their ability to adapt and seize opportunities. It shows they understand the market and they're tuned in to the government's priorities.
Right, speaking of government priorities, let's zoom out a bit and talk about India's wastewater challenge. It's not just sewage, right? It's industrial waste, agricultural runoff, and the huge volume from a growing population.
Exactly. And this is where companies like Enviro Infra come in. One report estimates that India might need over 4,500 new sewage treatment plants. Just think about that for a second. The investment, the jobs, and the impact on public health and the environment.
That's a staggering number. It really highlights the scale of the problem. But building these plants is only one part of the solution. What about the actual treatment process? What technologies are they using to clean up this wastewater?
They're using a range of technologies, everything from conventional methods like activated sludge processes to some really advanced systems like membrane bioreactors, MBRs for short, and moving bed bioreactors, those are MBBRs.
Okay, those sound pretty high-tech. Can you break it down for us a little? What makes these technologies so innovative?
Well, take MBRs, for example. They're like super fine filters. They remove even the tiniest particles, resulting in very high quality treated water. It's a step up from conventional methods, which aren't as efficient.
So they're investing in cutting-edge technology, but I'm curious about the cost implications. How do they balance the need for these advanced technologies with staying competitive on price?
It's a balancing act for sure. Sometimes they'll combine conventional methods for initial treatment and then use those more advanced systems for the final stages. It's about finding the most cost-effective approach for each project while still delivering high-quality treated water.
So it sounds like they're being strategic with their technology choices. But it's not just about the tech itself, right? We need to talk about the business side of things, the financial risks and rewards of operating in this industry.
Absolutely. And that's where their draft red herring prospectus is so valuable. It gives us insights into their revenue, their profitability, and their debt levels. The kind of stuff investors would be looking at very carefully.
We spend a lot of time on wastewater, but Enviro Infra also does water supply scheme projects, those WSSPs we talked about earlier. That side of their business is all about making sure people have access to clean water.
Right. A critical issue, especially with the government's big goal of providing safe drinking water to everyone through the Jal Jeevan mission. That's the JJM. Imagine trying to get pipe water to every rural household in India by 2024.
Wow, that's a massive project. And expensive too. I read the JJM is going to cost something like 3.6 lakh crore rupees.
Yeah, it's a huge undertaking, a huge investment in infrastructure. And that's where companies like Enviro Infra come in. They're bidding on and carrying out projects at every stage, building treatment plants, laying pipes, managing existing systems.
So they're not just cleaning up wastewater, they're actually making sure clean water gets to people's homes. Do they use those high-tech systems for water treatment too? Like the MBRs and MBBRs?
Treating drinking water is a little different. They might use those sometimes, but often they rely on more conventional methods. Things like coagulation, flocculation, sedimentation, and filtration.
Oh yeah, I vaguely remember those from high school chemistry. Can you remind us what those processes do?
Sure, imagine you've got a glass of muddy water. Coagulation and flocculation are like adding something that makes all the dirt clump together. Sedimentation lets those clumps settle at the bottom. And then filtration is like pouring the clear water through a sieve to get rid of any leftover particles.
Okay, that makes sense. So that takes care of the dirt and other things you can see. But what about the stuff you can't see? Like bacteria that could make people sick?
That's where disinfection comes in. They'll use things like chlorine, ultraviolet light, or ozone to kill off any harmful pathogens. It's like a final step to make sure the water is safe to drink.
It's incredible how much work goes into getting clean water to our taps. It's easy to take for granted, but for a lot of people in India, safe drinking water is still a real luxury.
Exactly. Companies like Enviro Infra and government initiatives like JJM are really making a difference. It's not just about infrastructure, it's about improving people's lives.
And speaking of improving lives, we should talk about the environmental impact. We've talked about the need for clean water, but what about protecting the environment from the byproducts of wastewater treatment?
That's an important point. And Enviro Infra seems to be very aware of it. They're using solar power at their plants, for instance.
Yeah, and they're also producing compressed biogas, that's CBG. It's like turning waste into something useful.
Exactly. CBG is a renewable fuel. You can use it for cooking, heating, even generating electricity. So it's a win-win. They reduce reliance on fossil fuels and find a use for what would otherwise be waste.
That's a great example of how sustainability and business success can go together. But let's be real, no business is perfect. What are some of the challenges that Enviro Infra might face?
Well, we've already mentioned the high employee attrition rate. That's definitely something to keep an eye on. And then there's the issue of fluctuating material costs. Prices for things like steel and cement can be all over the place, and that can really eat into profits.
Especially with all the global uncertainty right now. What else are they up against?
A lot of their clients are government authorities, right? So delays in payments are always a concern. Bureaucracy can really slow things down.
Makes sense. And what about competition? Are there other companies out there trying to get these government contracts?
Oh, absolutely. There are other players, domestic and international. Enviro Infra has to stay competitive, not just on price, but also on quality and their ability to deliver on time.
It sounds like a pretty complex and challenging environment.
Yeah, it is. Lots of opportunities, but also a lot of risks.
So how would you sum up Enviro Infra's position in this market? What are their strengths and what should investors watch out for?
I think their biggest strength is their ability to adapt. They started small, saw a need, and scaled up to meet it.
Yeah, their growth from Enviro Engineers to Enviro Infra Engineers Limited shows that.
Right. They understand the market and the government's priorities.
But what about their weaknesses?
Well, their reliance on government contracts is a bit of a double-edged sword. It gives them stability, but they're also vulnerable to changes in government policy.
So if the government shifts focus or cuts funding, it could have a big impact.
Exactly. And then there's the employee attrition issue. High turnover can disrupt projects and make it hard to keep skilled workers.
So addressing that is key to their long-term success.
Absolutely. This is a fast-moving industry. Enviro Infra has to be smart and strategic to stay on top. Right, so let's dive into those financials a bit more. This draft red herring prospectus, it's pretty revealing.
Yeah, I'm really curious about their order book. It gives us a sense of how much work they have lined up.
As of June 30th, 2024, their order book was worth over 1,900 crore rupees.
That's a lot of projects. It seems like there's a lot of demand for what they do.
Definitely. But the report also points out some risks associated with this order book.
Like what?
Well, first, there's no guarantee that all these projects will be completed on time and within budget. Delays and cost overruns, they happen all the time, especially in a country as big and complex as India.
Right, things come up. What other risks did they mention?
They also talked about the possibility of projects getting canceled or scaled back. Remember, a lot of their clients are government authorities, and sometimes government priorities change.
So the order book is a good sign, but it's not a sure thing.
Exactly. Investors should also look at their track record, their management team, their overall strategy.
Speaking of strategy, the report mentions Enviro Infra's plans to expand geographically. They're mostly focused on a few states right now, but they're looking to branch out.
Yeah, that's a smart move. Expanding geographically helps them diversify their revenue. They become less reliant on any one region.
So it's about spreading the risk and tapping into new markets. But I imagine going into new areas comes with its own set of challenges.
Oh, for sure. They'll have to deal with different regulations in each state, build relationships with new clients, and they might have to adapt their technologies and processes to different environments.
It's a trade-off. Potential growth, but also new hurdles to overcome.
Exactly. They have to weigh the risks and rewards.
As we wrap up this deep dive into Enviro Infra Engineers Limited, I'm struck by their position. They've got a strong base, a market that's growing, and ambitious plans. But they're also up against tough competition and some unique risks.
It's a classic story, full of potential and uncertainty.
Yeah, and it's clear that the need for wastewater treatment and clean water in India is only going to get bigger.
It's a huge opportunity, but it's also a fundamental need for society.
Absolutely. So we'll leave you with this thought. How can we innovate in wastewater treatment so that it not only cleans up our water, but also turns it into something valuable, something that can drive economic growth and help the environment?
It's a question worth thinking about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive for